I watched my best friend's face glow as she held out her left hand, the diamond catching the light from every angle. My stomach dropped as if I'd just plummeted 10 floors in a faulty elevator. "Summer, can you believe it?" Lucille squealed, her voice piercing through the ambient chatter of the restaurant. "Clifford proposed last night." I forced my lips into what I hoped resembled a smile. My wine glass suddenly felt slippery between my fingers, the Cabernet inside looking suspiciously like blood. Wow," I managed, the words scraping against my throat. "Congratulations." The rest of our friends erupted in excited chatter, leaning across the table to examine the ring. I remained frozen, watching this nightmare unfold in slow motion. Clifford, my Clifford, the man who'd held me through my father's funeral, who knew exactly how I took my coffee, who'd promised me forever exactly 18 months ago. Now he was marrying my best friend. "When did you two even start dating?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light and curious instead of accusatory. The question silenced the table momentarily. Lucille tucked a strand of her perfect blonde hair behind her ear, looking slightly uncomfortable for the first time. "About 8 months ago. We wanted to make sure it was serious before telling everyone." 8 months, which meant they'd started seeing each other barely 2 months after Clifford and I had ended things. The timeline made me dizzy. It just happened so naturally. Lucille continued, her eyes softening as she glanced at her phone, probably looking at a picture of him. "We ran into each other at Eduardo's birthday party, started talking, and, I don't know, something just clicked." I nodded mechanically, calculating dates in my head. Eduardo's birthday party. I'd been invited, but couldn't go, because I was visiting my sister Zuriel after her surgery. Clifford had told me he wasn't going either, because he had to work late. The first lie in what was apparently a long chain of them. "I'm so happy for you," I lied back, matching his betrayal with my own. I took a large gulp of wine, welcoming the burn. Addison, always perceptive, shot me a concerned look from across the table. She alone in this group knew the full extent of what Clifford and I had been to each other. Not just the 3 years of dating that everyone knew about, but the talks of marriage, the apartment we'd been planning to get together, the future we'd mapped out in whispered conversations at night. "We're thinking a spring wedding," Lucille said, completely oblivious to the hurricane raging inside me. "Nothing too big, maybe 70 people. Which brings me to something important." She reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl. "Summer, will you be my maid of honor?" The restaurant seemed to tilt sideways. The background noise faded to a dull roar as blood rushed to my ears. Maid of honor. She wanted me to stand beside her as she married the man I'd once believed would be my husband. I don't know what to say," I stammered, which was the first honest thing I'd said all evening. "Say yes." Lucille squeezed my hand, her eyes pleading. "You're my oldest friend. It wouldn't feel right without you standing up there with me." 5 pairs of eyes stared at me expectantly. I felt trapped, cornered by social expectations, and the elaborate pretense that this situation was somehow normal. "Of course," I finally said, the words tasting like ash. "I'd be honored." The table erupted in cheers again. Someone ordered champagne. I excused myself to the bathroom, barely making it into a stall before the tears came. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal door, trying to steady my breathing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Addison. "You okay? We can leave if you need to." I didn't respond. Couldn't find the words to explain that I wasn't just heartbroken. I was furious at Clifford for moving on so quickly, and with my best friend of all people. At Lucille for either not knowing or not caring about what she was doing. At myself for sitting there and congratulating them instead of flipping the table and walking out. When I returned, my face carefully washed and composed, they were passing around Lucille's phone, looking at engagement photos. The photographer had captured the moment perfectly. Clifford down on one knee in front of the fountain at Westlake Park, Lucille's hands covering her mouth in surprise, the sunset casting them both in a golden glow. It was the same fountain where he'd first told me he loved me. "Isn't it perfect?" Lucille asked as I slid back into my seat. Clifford remembered me mentioning once that I always dreamed of being proposed to by water. "He's so thoughtful." I'd told him that it had been my dream. As the evening finally, mercifully wound down, Lucille hugged me tightly in the parking lot. "Thank you for being so supportive," she whispered. "I was nervous to tell you. I know you and Clifford dated for a while. A while. 3 years of my life reduced to a while." "It's ancient history," I lied. "I'm just happy you're happy." She pulled back, studying my face with those innocent blue eyes. "You understand, right? How sometimes the heart just knows?" The question hung between us in the cool night air, heavy with implications I couldn't begin to address. My smile felt like it might crack my face in two. "Of course I understand," I said, the words echoing in my mind as everything I thought I knew about loyalty and friendship shattered around me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lucille's ring-adorned hand, her beaming smile, the casual way she'd announced her engagement to my ex, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. At 3 a.m., I found myself doing what any rational woman would do, scrolling through old photos of Clifford and me on my phone. There we were at Alki Beach, his arm around my waist, both of us squinting into the sun. Another at his brother's wedding, where he'd whispered, "Next time it'll be us." A candid shot of him cooking breakfast, in nothing but boxers, spatula in hand, laughing at something I'd said. The memories came in waves, each one carrying sensory details that felt like tiny daggers. The woodsy scent of his cologne, the rough callus on his right thumb from years of playing guitar, the way he'd absently traced circles on my back while we watched movies. By dawn, grief had hardened into something else entirely. I called in sick to work and drove to the coffee shop, where I knew Clifford stopped every morning before heading to his architectural firm. Some habits never change, like his addiction to overpriced Americanos with an extra shot. I spotted him the moment he walked in, his tall frame and dark curly hair instantly recognizable even from behind. He was wearing the blue button-down I'd given him for his birthday last year. The sight of it made my blood simmer. He didn't notice me until he turned from the counter, coffee in hand. The shock on his face would have been comical under different circumstances. "Summer," he said, recovering quickly. "What are you doing here?" "Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing about my best friend's bed." His eyes darted around the cafe, checking if anyone had heard, always so concerned with appearances. "My ex." "Can we talk outside?" he asked, voice low. The morning air was crisp as we stepped onto the sidewalk. I crossed my arms, partly from the chill, partly as armor. "Congratulations on your engagement," I said, the words coated in venom. "When exactly were you planning to tell me?" Clifford sighed, running his hand through his hair. "A nervous habit I once found endearing. I knew Lucille was telling you last night. I thought it would be better coming from her." "Better for whom? You?" I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. 8 months, Clifford. You waited all of 2 months after we broke up before moving on to my best friend." "It wasn't planned," he said, his tone maddeningly reasonable. "It just happened." "Things don't just happen. You make choices. Both of you made choices." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, I know this isn't ideal." "Ideal?" I cut him off. "You're marrying my best friend, the woman who held my hand through our breakup, who listened to me cry over you for weeks, and you proposed at our fountain." His brow furrowed. "What? Westlake Park, by the fountain, where you first told me you loved me." Recognition flickered across his face, followed quickly by guilt. I didn't remember that was our place." The lie was so transparent, it almost made me laugh. "You didn't remember, or you didn't care. Summer, it's been over a year since we broke up. You can't expect What I expected was basic human decency from both of you. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Does she know why we really broke up, Clifford? Does she know about Melissa? His face paled. Melissa, the woman whose texts I'd found on his phone. The affair he'd begged me to forgive, promising it was a one-time mistake. The real reason for our breakup, not the growing apart story we'd told everyone else. That has nothing to do with Lucille and me, he said stiffly. Doesn't it though? Because I'm wondering if history is repeating itself. I'm wondering if she knows who she's really marrying. His jaw tightened. Don't do this, Summer. Don't ruin things because you're hurt. I'm not the one who ruins things, I said quietly. That's your specialty. As I turned to leave, he caught my arm. Wait, what are you going to do? I looked pointedly at his hand until he released me. I haven't decided yet, please, he said, and I heard genuine fear in his voice. Lucille doesn't need to know about the past. It would only hurt her. Funny how you're suddenly concerned about hurting people. I walked away, my mind racing. The confrontation had confirmed what I'd suspected. Lucille had no idea about Clifford's infidelity. She was walking blindfolded into a marriage with a man who had already proven himself capable of betrayal. Back in my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, torn between loyalty to a friendship and the burning need for truth. My phone buzzed with a text from Addison. Brunch? I think we need to talk about last night. As I started the engine, another text came through. This one from Eduardo, Clifford's friend. Heard about the engagement. Weird how fast things happen, right? Let me know if you want to grab a drink sometime. There's stuff you should probably know. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Eduardo had always been friendly, but we weren't close. For him to reach out like this meant something. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Lucille's name flashed on the screen, accompanied by a photo of us from college, arms around each other, laughing at some forgotten joke, a lifetime ago. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Hey, I said, trying to sound normal. What's up? I need your help, Lucille said, her voice bubbling with excitement. Clifford's parents are throwing us an engagement party next weekend, and I have absolutely nothing to wear. Shopping emergency. Are you free today? The universe had a sick sense of humor. Actually, I said slowly, making a decision. I was just about to meet Eduardo for coffee. Can I call you back? The slight pause told me she was surprised. Eduardo, since when do you two hang out? We don't really. He just texted me about catching up. Another pause. Oh, okay, call me after. Of course, I promised, already typing a response to Eduardo. Name the time and place. I want to know everything. Eduardo chose a dimly lit bar downtown, the kind of place where conversations disappear into dark corners. I arrived 15 minutes early and still found him waiting, nursing something amber in a tumbler. He looked up when I approached, his expression hard to read. Didn't expect you to actually come, he said, as I slid into the booth across from him. Didn't expect you to actually reach out. I flagged down a server and ordered a gin and tonic. So what's this about? Eduardo leaned forward, lowering his voice despite the already private setting. Look, Clifford and I go way back. He's been my friend since college. But what he's doing to you and Lucille, it's not right. The server returned with my drink. I took a long sip, welcoming the bitter bite. What exactly is he doing to Lucille? The same thing he did to you. Eduardo's eyes met mine. He's seeing someone else. Even though I'd suspected it, hearing the confirmation felt like being dunked in ice water. How do you know? Business trip to Portland last month. I went with him. We were meeting clients together. He told Lucille he was staying an extra night for meetings. The meetings were real, but they wrapped up early. Eduardo swirled his drink. He spent the night with some woman named Vanessa. They weren't exactly subtle about it. I closed my eyes briefly. And you're telling me this because Lucille's a good person. And because what he did to you wasn't fair either. He hesitated. Also, if I'm being honest, I'm tired of covering for him. He told me not to mention the woman to anyone, especially you or Lucille. Said it would complicate things unnecessarily. How considerate of him, I said, my voice flat. Eduardo pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then slid it across the table. That's them outside the hotel restaurant. I was heading back to my room when I saw them. The photo showed Clifford, with his arm around a tall woman with dark hair. They were standing close, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Even from the awkward angle, there was no mistaking the intimacy. Does he know you took this? Eduardo shook his head. No, and he'd probably never speak to me again if he knew I was showing you. I handed the phone back, my mind racing. Why tell me and not Lucille directly? Because I barely know Lucille, and because he looked uncomfortable. I thought you deserved to know first, given your history. I studied him, trying to determine if he had ulterior motives. There's something you're not telling me. Eduardo sighed. Clifford talks when he drinks, a lot, and he's said some things about you that made me think maybe you didn't know the whole story about your breakup either. My stomach clenched. What things? That Melissa wasn't the only one, that there were others before her. He looked genuinely sorry to be the bearer of this news, and that he started seeing Lucille while you two were still together, not just after you broke up. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table, steadying myself. How long before? A couple months, from what I gathered. I'm sorry, Summer. I thought you should know. I drained my drink, barely tasting it. Why are you really doing this, Eduardo? Clifford's your friend. He is, but my sister went through something similar last year. Her fiancé cheated. Everyone knew. No one told her. She found out on their honeymoon. His expression hardened. I won't be part of that happening to someone else. I nodded slowly, processing everything. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. I stood up, leaving money for my drink. But I'll figure it out. The cool evening air helped clear my head as I walked to my car. My phone buzzed with a text from Addison. You okay? Haven't heard from you all day. I called her instead of texting back. She answered on the second ring. I need your help, I said without preamble. Name it. Can I come over? It's about Clifford and Lucille. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on Addison's couch, showing her the photo Eduardo had sent me after I'd asked him to forward it. That absolute piece of garbage, she muttered, handing my phone back. Are you going to tell Lucille? I don't know how, I admitted, my voice cracking. She's so happy, Addie. You should hear her talk about the wedding. And if I tell her, she'll think I'm just jealous or trying to sabotage her. But you can't let her marry him without knowing. I know. I pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes. And it's not just this woman in Portland. Eduardo says there were others when Clifford was with me, and that he and Lucille started seeing each other before we broke up. Addison's expression softened. Oh, Summer, I feel so stupid, I whispered, tears finally breaking through. All this time I thought I wasn't enough for him, that I did something wrong. But he was just Clifford. She moved closer, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. You're not stupid. He's just really good at lying. I leaned into her embrace, allowing myself a moment of vulnerability before straightening up. I need to find out more. One photo isn't enough. Lucille will need more than that to believe me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I need to talk to this Vanessa person, and I need to find out if there are others. I pulled out my phone again. Eduardo mentioned Clifford has a work event next week that Lucille isn't attending. Some client dinner. You think he might meet someone there? It's worth checking out. I hesitated. Will you help me? I can't do this alone. Addison squeezed my hand. Of course, whatever you need. As I drove home later that night, my phone rang. Lucille's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, not trusting myself to sound normal, but ignoring her would only raise suspicions. Hey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. So how was coffee with Eduardo? She asked, sounding genuinely curious. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Interesting. He had some work stories to share. About Clifford? The direct question caught me off guard. Some, yeah. Why? There was a pause. Clifford mentioned you two talked this morning. He seemed worried. My heart raced. Did he say what about? No, just that you seemed upset. Her voice softened. Summer, if this is hard for you, me and Clifford, I need you to tell me. I value our friendship more than anything. The sincerity in her voice made my chest ache. She had no idea what was coming. It's not that, I lied. I'm happy for you. Really. Good, she said, sounding relieved. Because I need my best friend by my side through all of this. No one knows me like you do. As I hung up, a realization crystallized. I wasn't just doing this for justice or revenge. I was doing it because Lucille deserved the truth, even if that truth would break her heart. The client dinner was at Canlis, one of the most expensive restaurants in Seattle. I parked across the street, feeling ridiculous in the black dress I'd chosen for what Addison had dubbed Operation Cheater Surveillance. She sat beside me in the passenger seat, scanning the entrance through a pair of compact binoculars. This is either the most justified or most unhinged thing I've ever done, I muttered, checking my lipstick in the rearview mirror. Why not both? Addison lowered the binoculars. There he is, blue suit, coming out of that Uber. I watched Clifford step onto the sidewalk, adjusting his tie. He looked good, polished, confident, completely unburdened by the double life he was leading. 4 other men in similar attire joined him, all heading toward the restaurant entrance. Looks like a legitimate business dinner so far, Addison said. Let's give it time. Eduardo said these things usually break up around 9, and then sometimes Clifford goes for drinks after. We settled in to wait, making small talk to pass the time. At 8:45, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucille, trying on potential rehearsal dinner dresses. Thoughts? Attached was a selfie of her, in a pale blue dress, beaming at the camera. My stomach twisted with guilt and sadness. You okay? Addison asked, noticing my expression. I showed her the text. I feel like I'm betraying her by not saying anything yet. You're gathering evidence first. That's not betrayal. It's making sure you have what you need to help her. I nodded, typing back a quick response. Gorgeous. The color is perfect on you. At 9:20, movement at the restaurant caught our attention. The business group emerged, shaking hands on the sidewalk. 2 of the men got into a waiting car, while the others, including Clifford, remained talking. What's he doing? I squinted through the darkness, checking his phone. A lot. Addison raised the binoculars again. Now he's saying goodbye to the others. We watched as Clifford waved off his colleagues, then immediately pulled out his phone again, typing rapidly. A minute later, he began walking, not toward the valet for his car, but down the street. Let's follow him, I said, starting the engine. We trailed him at a distance as he walked 3 blocks to a hotel bar. Through the large windows, we could see him take a seat at the bar, still checking his phone periodically. I'm going in, I decided. Addison grabbed my arm. Are you sure that's wise? He'll recognize you immediately. I'll stay out of sight. I just want to see who he's meeting. I slipped out of the car and approached the hotel, heart hammering in my chest. The bar had a secondary entrance from the lobby, which I used, positioning myself behind a large decorative column where I could observe without being easily spotted. Clifford was nursing a whiskey, his back partially to me. 15 minutes passed with no sign of anyone joining him. I was beginning to think we'd misread the situation when a woman with shoulder-length blonde hair approached. She was wearing a fitted red dress and heels that clicked purposefully across the floor. Not Vanessa from Portland, someone new. She slid onto the stool beside Clifford, who immediately leaned in to kiss her cheek. Their body language was unmistakable. The way she placed her hand on his arm, how closely they sat, the intimate way they spoke with heads bent together. I fumbled for my phone, trying to take a discreet photo, but the angle was wrong. I needed to move closer. As I shifted position, a server stepped directly into my path. "Can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, loudly enough that several heads turned, including Clifford's. Our eyes met across the room. His widened in shock, then narrowed in understanding. He said something quickly to the blonde, then stood and started walking toward me. I turned and hurried back through the lobby, pushing through the revolving door onto the street. Addison had pulled the car closer, and I practically dove into the passenger seat. Go, 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 I urged. She pulled away from the curb just as Clifford emerged from the hotel. I caught a glimpse of his face in the side mirror, a mixture of anger and panic that confirmed everything. What happened? Addison asked once we were safely moving through traffic. He saw me. He was with someone. Not Vanessa, someone new. My hands were shaking. He's going to know why I was there. My phone rang almost immediately. Clifford's name flashed on the screen. I declined the call, but it rang again seconds later. You should answer, Addison said quietly. Find out what he has to say for himself. I took a deep breath and accepted the call. Hello? What the hell do you think you're doing? Clifford's voice was low, controlled fury. I could ask you the same question. Who's the blonde, Clifford? Does Lucille know about her, too? This is none of your business, Summer. You need to back off. Or what? You'll tell Lucille I'm stalking you. Go ahead. I'll tell her why. There was a pause. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. Look, this isn't what you think. Kendra is a client. That's all. Do you always sit that close to your clients? Kiss their cheeks? Let them touch you like that? Another pause. What do you want, Summer? The question caught me off guard. What? To keep quiet. What do you want? Money? Is that it? The suggestion was so offensive, I nearly laughed. I don't want your money, Clifford. I want you to tell Lucille the truth before she makes the biggest mistake of her life. And if I don't, then I will. He was quiet for so long, I thought he might have hung up. You have no proof of anything. Don't I? Eduardo saw you in Portland with Vanessa. I just saw you with Kendra. How many others are there, Clifford? How long before someone else comes forward? Eduardo, he repeated, his voice hardening. I should have known. Leave him out of this. This is between you and me. No, Summer, this is between me and Lucille. And I'm warning you, stay out of it. The call ended abruptly. I stared at the phone, my heart racing. That sounded intense, Addison said, glancing over at me. He tried to bribe me, then he threatened me. I leaned back against the headrest. But he's right about one thing. I don't have solid proof. Not the kind Lucille would need to believe me over him. Addison pulled into my apartment complex and parked. What are you going to do now? I stared out the window at the night sky, mind racing through possibilities. I need to find Vanessa from Portland. And maybe this Kendra too, if I can get one of them to confirm the relationship. My phone buzzed with a text. I expected it to be from Clifford, but instead, it was Lucille. Bridesmaid dress shopping tomorrow at 11. Don't forget. Below it, a second message appeared. This one from an unknown number. This is Damien, Eduardo's roommate. He asked me to contact you. He's in the hospital. Clifford found out he talked to you. I showed Addison the message, my blood running cold. Jesus, she whispered. This is getting dangerous, Summer. No, I said. A new resolve hardening within me. This is getting real. And Clifford just showed exactly how far he'll go to protect his lies. Eduardo looked worse than I expected. His left eye was swollen shut, a deep purple bruise spreading across his cheekbone. His lip was split, and his right hand was wrapped in a bandage. He managed a pained smile when I walked into the hospital room. You should see the other guy, he joked weakly. This isn't funny, Eduardo. I set the flowers I'd brought on his bedside table. What happened? Clifford happened. He shifted uncomfortably in the bed. Showed up at my apartment last night, completely unhinged. Started ranting about loyalty and how I betrayed him. When I didn't deny talking to you, he lost it. Damien, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. I heard the commotion and came out of my room. If I hadn't pulled him off, he trailed off. The implication clear. Guilt crashed over me like a wave. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. No, Eduardo said firmly. It's Clifford's fault. He made his choices, all of them. A nurse came in to check Eduardo's vitals, and Damien took the opportunity to pull me into the hallway. The police were here earlier, he said in a low voice. Eduardo filed a report, But he downplayed what happened, said it was just an argument that got out of hand. Why would he do that? Clifford assaulted him. Damien shrugged. He says he doesn't want to make things worse. But I think you should know. Clifford threatened both of you while he was throwing punches. Said he'd ruin Eduardo professionally, and that he'd make sure you regretted interfering. My stomach knotted with anxiety. Did Eduardo tell the police that part? No, like I said. He downplayed everything. Damien checked his watch. I need to get back to work. Will you stay with him for a bit? I nodded, and Damien left after extracting a promise from Eduardo to call if he needed anything. When we were alone, Eduardo gestured for me to sit. I'm really sorry about this, I said again. Stop apologizing. He winced as he adjusted his position. But I do need to ask, what are you planning to do now? Because Clifford is seriously unraveling. I don't know. I ran a hand through my hair. I was going to try to find the women he's been seeing, get concrete proof for Lucille. But after this, you're scared, Eduardo finished for me. You should be. I've known Clifford for years, and I've never seen him like this. I can't just do nothing. Lucille is about to marry him. Eduardo was quiet for a moment. There might be another way to get proof, something that doesn't involve you confronting anyone directly. I'm listening. Clifford's emails. He's careless with his passwords. Uses the same one for everything. I've seen him enter it enough times to know what it is. I stared at him. You want me to hack his email? That's illegal. So is assault, Eduardo countered, gesturing to his face. Look, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just saying it's an option. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucille. Where are you? We're all at the bridal shop waiting. I'd completely forgotten about bridesmaid dress shopping. I have to go, I told Eduardo, standing quickly. Lucille is waiting for me. Summer, Eduardo called as I reached the door. Be careful, whatever you decide to do. 30 minutes later, I was standing on a pedestal in the bridal boutique, wearing a pale pink gown that Lucille had selected for her bridesmaids. She circled me critically, tugging at the fabric. It needs to be taken in at the waist, she told the seamstress, and maybe shortened a bit. I stared at my reflection, feeling like I was watching someone else's life. How was I here, being fitted for a dress, to stand beside my best friend, as she married a man who was not only cheating on her, but had violently assaulted someone for exposing his secret? Summer, Lucille was looking at me with concern. Are you okay? You seem distracted. I'm fine, I lied. Just tired. Didn't sleep well last night. She studied me for a moment longer, then turned to the other bridesmaids. Why don't you guys try on your dresses? I want to see everyone together. As the others disappeared into changing rooms, Lucille pulled me to a quiet corner of the boutique. What's really going on? She asked, her voice gentle but insistent. And don't say nothing. I've known you too long for that to work. I looked into her trusting face and felt my resolve waver. Should I tell her now, here, in a bridal shop surrounded by the trappings of her dream wedding? I saw Clifford last night, I said carefully. Her eyebrows rose. You did? Where? At a hotel bar, after his client dinner. Something flickered across her face. Concern, confusion, maybe a hint of suspicion. Why were you at a hotel bar? I was meeting a friend for drinks, I lied, hating myself for it. I saw Clifford there with a woman. They seemed close. Lucille's expression hardened slightly. What are you saying exactly? I'm not saying anything. I'm just telling you what I saw. She crossed her arms. Did you talk to him about it? Briefly. He said she was a client. Then she was a client. Lucille's tone was final. Clifford meets with clients all the time, Summer. It's his job. Of course, I said, backing down. This wasn't the right time or place. I'm sure that's all it was. She studied me for a long moment. Is there something else you want to tell me? The question hung between us, heavy with implication. I thought of Eduardo in the hospital bed, of Clifford's threats, of the growing web of lies and danger. No, I said finally, nothing else. The rest of the appointment passed in a blur. As we were leaving, Lucille pulled me aside again. I know this is hard for you, she said, squeezing my hand. Seeing me with Clifford. I understand if you need some space. The irony was almost too much to bear. It's not that, I insisted. Then what is it? Because something's off, Summer. I can feel it. I took a deep breath. I'm just worried about you. I want you to be happy. I am happy, she said, her face softening. Happier than I've ever been. Clifford is everything I've ever wanted. As I watched her walk to her car, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Vanessa from Portland. Eduardo gave me your number. We need to talk about Clifford. He's not who you think he is. I stared at the message, my heart racing. This was it. The proof I needed. But as I looked up at Lucille's retreating figure, I wondered if any proof would be enough to break through her belief in the man she loved. And more importantly, I wondered if I was ready for what might happen when I tried. I met Vanessa at a coffee shop near the university campus. Neutral territory, far from anywhere Clifford might appear. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun, and anxious eyes that darted around the room as I approached. Thanks for meeting me, I said, sliding into the chair across from her. She nodded, hands wrapped tightly around her mug. Eduardo said I could trust you. You can. I kept my voice gentle, recognizing the fear in her posture. How do you know Clifford? I work at his firm's Portland office, administrative assistant. She took a shaky breath. It started at the holiday party last year. He said all the right things, that he was practically single, that his relationship was ending. I believed him. The familiar story made my chest ache. And when did you find out about Lucille? 2 months ago. He left his phone unlocked while he was in the shower. I saw their texts. Her eyes met mine. When I confronted him, he said they were just friends, that she was obsessed with him, but he was trying to let her down easy. I almost laughed at the absurdity. And you believed that? Not really. But then he got intense. Said I was overreacting, that I was trying to control him. She looked down. Classic gaslighting, right? I see that now. What changed? Why are you talking to me? Vanessa pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then pushed it across the table. He sent this yesterday. The text message was chilling. I know you've been talking to Summer. Stop now, or I'll make sure you never work in architecture again. Remember who has all the power here. There's more, she said, taking the phone back and opening her email. After Eduardo contacted me, I started saving everything, emails, texts, photos. She turned the screen toward me, dozens of emails between her and Clifford, many explicitly romantic or sexual, photos of them together in Portland, hotel receipts, and most damning of all, messages where he discussed Lucille, calling her his cover and convenient. Can you forward these to me? I asked, my heart pounding with a mixture of vindication and dread. She nodded. Already did. Eduardo gave me your email. She hesitated. There's something else you should know. I'm not the only one at the firm. There's a woman in the Seattle office too. Kendra, the blonde from the hotel bar. Has she saved evidence too? I don't know. We've never spoken directly. I just overheard Clifford on the phone with her once. Vanessa leaned forward. What are you going to do with all this? Show it to Lucille. She deserves to know who she's about to marry. Vanessa's expression darkened. Be careful. When Clifford feels cornered, he gets scary. The things he said to me, she trailed off, shuddering slightly, as if summoned by our conversation. My phone lit up with Clifford's name. I declined the call, but a text followed immediately. We need to talk. Now. It's about Lucille. I should go, I told Vanessa, suddenly uneasy. Thank you for everything. She grabbed my wrist as I stood. Promise me you'll be careful, and that you'll let me know what happens. I'm scared for you. I promised, though the weight of what I was about to do settled heavily on my shoulders as I left the coffee shop. Outside, I called Addison. I have everything, I told her. Emails, texts, photos. Vanessa sent it all. That's great, Addison said, but her tone was hesitant. What's wrong? Clifford just texted me. Says we need to talk about Lucille. Don't meet him alone, she warned. After what he did to Eduardo. I know, I'm not going to. I paused at my car. I think it's time to tell Lucille. Tonight. Before the engagement party, tomorrow. Want me to come with you? No, I decided. This should come from me alone. But stay by your phone, okay? I drove to my apartment, mind racing with how exactly to present everything to Lucille. The evidence was overwhelming. But would it be enough to overcome her love for Clifford? And what would it do to her? My sister Zuriel was waiting outside my door when I arrived, arms crossed, expression stern. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised. Lucille called me, she said, following me inside. She's worried about you, says you've been acting strange, making accusations about Clifford. I dropped my bag on the counter. Did she tell you what kind of accusations? That he's cheating. That he's not who she thinks he is. Zuriel's eyes were concerned. Summer, are you sure this isn't about your history with him? That you're not just projecting? The suggestion stung. You think I'm making this up? I think grief and jealousy can make people see things that aren't there. She softened her tone. I know how much you loved him. This isn't about that. I pulled out my laptop, opening the emails Vanessa had forwarded. Look, read these. Zuriel scanned the messages, her expression shifting from skepticism to shock. Oh my God. There's more. I showed her the photos, the hotel receipts, the texts. He attacked Eduardo for telling me about Vanessa, put him in the hospital. Jesus. She sat heavily on my couch. Poor Lucille. I'm telling her tonight. I have to. Zuriel was quiet for a moment. Have you considered what this will do to her? To your friendship? Of course I have. But what's the alternative? Let her marry him. No, you're right. She sighed. But be prepared. Sometimes people don't want to see the truth, even when it's right in front of them. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Clifford. I'm outside your apartment. We need to talk now. I moved to the window and peered through the blinds. Sure enough, his car was parked across the street. He's here, I told Zuriel, my voice tight with anxiety. Don't let him in, she said immediately, joining me at the window. Call Lucille, tell her to come over, show her everything with him right outside. He won't be able to deny it. The suggestion was bold, confrontational, and potentially explosive. It was also exactly what needed to happen. I picked up my phone and called Lucille. Hey, she answered, sounding distracted. What's up? Can you come to my apartment? Right now? It's important. There was a pause. Is everything okay? I watched Clifford get out of his car, pacing on the sidewalk as he stared up at my building. No, I said honestly, but it will be once you get here. Please, Lou. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't crucial. Okay, she said finally. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I hung up, Zuriel squeezed my shoulder. You're doing the right thing. My phone buzzed with one more text from Clifford. Last chance, Summer. Let me in, or I start telling Lucille my version of events. Trust me, you won't like what I have to say. I turned to Zuriel, my resolve hardening. It's time to end this, once and for all. The knocking started 5 minutes after I texted Clifford that I wouldn't let him in. Not gentle taps, but angry, insistent pounding that made the door frame rattle. Summer, open the damn door. His voice carried easily through the thin wood. Zuriel moved closer to me on the couch. Should we call the police? I shook my head, eyes fixed on my laptop screen, where all of Vanessa's evidence was displayed. Not yet. Lucille will be here any minute. The pounding stopped abruptly, replaced by the muffled sound of Clifford talking. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was agitated. He's on the phone, Zuriel whispered. My own phone buzzed with a text from Lucille. Parking now. What's going on? Before I could respond, another text arrived. Why is Clifford outside your building, looking upset? My heart hammered against my ribs. This was happening faster than I'd planned. She's here, I told Zuriel, standing up, and she's seen Clifford. I moved to the window and peered down. Lucille was approaching Clifford on the sidewalk, her body language confused and concerned. They were too far away for me to hear their conversation, but I could see Clifford gesturing emphatically, then pointing up toward my apartment. "He's getting to her first," I said, panic rising in my throat. "We need to go down there." Zuriel grabbed my arm. "Wait, take the laptop. Show her the evidence right there, where he can't deny it." I nodded, snatching up the computer and my phone. We hurried down the 3 flights of stairs to the building's entrance. Through the glass door, I could see Lucille and Clifford in what appeared to be an intense discussion. I pushed the door open, the evening air cool against my flushed skin. They both turned at the sound. "Summer," Lucille said, her voice tight with confusion. "What's going on?" "Clifford says you've been stalking him, that you're trying to break us up because you're jealous." Clifford stood slightly behind her, his expression a carefully constructed mask of concern. "I didn't want to tell you," he said to Lucille, "but it's gotten out of hand. She followed me to a business dinner. She's been contacting people from work with wild accusations." "Stop lying," I cut in, my voice steadier than I felt. "Lucille, I need to show you something, and I need you to look at it with an open mind." I opened the laptop, balancing it awkwardly in my arms. These are emails and texts between Clifford and a woman named Vanessa, who works at his Portland office. They've been having an affair for months. Lucille's eyes flicked to the screen, then back to Clifford. "What is she talking about?" "It's all fabricated," he said quickly. "She's obsessed with breaking us up. You know how she never got over our relationship." "Read them," I insisted, stepping closer to Lucille. "Read what he says about you, about your engagement." Lucille hesitated, then took the laptop from me. Her eyes scanned the screen, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. "This can't be real," she murmured. "It's not," Clifford insisted, moving to look over her shoulder. His face paled as he recognized the emails. "Those are taken out of context. She's manipulated them." "There are photos too," I said quietly. "And it's not just Vanessa. There's a woman named Kendra in the Seattle office. I saw them together at a hotel bar the night of your client dinner." Lucille scrolled through the evidence, her hands beginning to tremble. "These dates, some of these are from before we were even engaged. Some are from when we first started dating." "Lou, I can explain," Clifford began, but she held up a hand to silence him. "You called me your cover?" Her voice cracked on the word. "You said I was convenient." "He's been lying to both of you," Zuriel said gently. "And to others too." Lucille turned to me, her eyes swimming with tears. "You knew about this? For how long?" "I started suspecting something when Eduardo mentioned seeing Clifford with Vanessa in Portland. Then I saw him with Kendra myself." I swallowed hard. "I needed to be sure before I told you. I needed proof." "Eduardo," Clifford spat the name. "That traitor." "The Eduardo you put in the hospital," I challenged, "because he told me the truth." Lucille's head snapped up. "What?" "He attacked Eduardo," I explained. "Beat him badly enough that he needed medical attention. All because Eduardo confirmed Clifford was cheating on you." Lucille turned to Clifford, her expression hardening through her tears. "Did you hurt Eduardo?" Clifford's facade began to crack. "It wasn't like that. He was spreading lies, trying to ruin my reputation." "Answer me," Lucille demanded. "Did you hurt him?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Lucille closed the laptop with a decisive snap and handed it back to me. "We're done," she said to Clifford, her voice surprisingly steady. "The engagement is off. The relationship is over." "Lou, please." Clifford grabbed her arm. "Don't throw everything away based on lies and misunderstandings. I love you. Let go of me." Her words were ice. When he didn't immediately comply, I stepped forward. She said, "Let go." Clifford released her arm, but turned his fury on me. "This is all your fault. You couldn't stand to see her happy, could you? Couldn't stand that I chose her over you. The accusation might have wounded me once, but now it just felt pathetic. This isn't about me. It's about who you really are. You have no idea who I am," he snarled, stepping toward me. Zuriel moved between us. "Back off, Clifford. It's over." For a moment, I thought he might lash out, physically. His hands clenched into fists, his face contorted with rage. But then, as if remembering we were on a public sidewalk, he seemed to deflate. "You'll regret this," he said, looking past me to Lucille. "Both of you." He turned and stalked to his car, slamming the door before speeding away. The three of us stood in silence for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling around us. Lucille's composure finally broke. A sob escaped her throat as she covered her face with her hands. Without hesitation, I wrapped my arms around her, holding her, as her body shook with grief. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry." "How could I have been so blind?" she choked out. "How did I not see it?" "Because he didn't want you to," Zuriel said gently. "That's what people like him do. They make you doubt yourself instead of them." Lucille pulled back slightly, her tear-streaked face searching mine. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" The question I'd been dreading. "I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, that it would just push you closer to him and further from me." I took a shaky breath. "And I needed to be absolutely certain before I hurt you like this." She nodded slowly, processing. "Thank you," she said finally, "for caring enough to tell me the truth, even knowing what it would do." As we stood there on the sidewalk, the evening air cooling the tears on Lucille's cheeks, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and something else. A sense that while something precious had been broken today, something equally valuable had been preserved. The wedding venue looked different in the pale morning light. Empty chairs lined up in neat rows, waiting for guests who would never arrive. White ribbons fluttered from the pergola, where vows would never be exchanged. I stood at the entrance, watching Lucille move methodically through the space, leaving handwritten notes on each table. "You didn't have to come," she said without looking up. "I could have handled this alone." "I know." I moved closer, picking up one of the notes. "Dear friends and family, the wedding has been cancelled. With gratitude for your understanding, Lucille." Simple, dignified, heartbreaking. "How many more do you have to write?" I asked. "About 30. She straightened a centerpiece that didn't need straightening. "Clifford's mother called this morning. Apparently, he told her I called things off because I have commitment issues." I bit back my immediate angry response. "What did you tell her?" "The truth." Lucille met my eyes for the first time that morning. I emailed her the evidence, all of it. The boldness of the move surprised me. How did she react? She apologized, said she'd suspected something wasn't right for a while. Lucille resumed writing notes. "Turns out, Clifford's father did the same thing to her. Like father, like son." I sat down at one of the tables, watching her methodical movements. 3 days had passed since the confrontation outside my apartment. 3 days of helping Lucille cancel vendors, return gifts, and explain to confused friends and family why the wedding was off. Through it all, she'd maintained a composure that both impressed and worried me. "Have you cried yet?" I asked quietly. Her hand paused mid-sentence. "What? Since that night, have you really let yourself cry?" She set down her pen carefully. "I'm fine, Summer." "You're not fine. No one would be fine." "What do you want me to say?" Her voice remained steady, but I could see the effort it took. "That I feel like an idiot, that I'm humiliated, that I keep checking my phone, even though I've blocked his number." "If that's the truth, then yes." Lucille stared at the half-written note in front of her. "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, all the times he was late, or canceling plans, or being vague about where he'd been." She looked up at me. "Did you see it, back when you were with him?" The question caught me off guard. Not at first, but eventually, yes. The inconsistencies started piling up. "Is that why you broke up?" I hesitated, weighing how much to share. "I found texts from another woman. When I confronted him, he denied everything, made me feel crazy for suspecting him. But I knew." "Why didn't you tell me when he and I started dating?" The question I'd been dreading. I tried, in my way. "Remember when I asked if you were sure about him? If you really knew him?" I sighed. "But you were so happy, and I didn't want to be the bitter ex-girlfriend trying to ruin your relationship." Lucille nodded slowly. I wouldn't have believed you anyway, not without proof. That's why I needed it this time. Irrefutable evidence. She gathered the completed notes into a neat stack. Eduardo's being released from the hospital today. I sent him flowers. That's unexpected. He tried to protect me in his way, just like you did. She stood, smoothing her skirt. I filed a police report about Clifford's assault on him, added my statement to Eduardo's. I stared at her, surprised again by her decisiveness. You did? Men like Clifford don't stop unless they're forced to. Her voice hardened. I also contacted HR at his firm, sent them everything about Vanessa and Kendra. Lucille. Don't worry, I redacted the personal details, but they needed to know he was using his position to pursue subordinates. She began gathering her things. The firm called me yesterday. Apparently, I wasn't the first to report him. They've opened a formal investigation. I followed her as she walked toward the exit. How are you doing all this? I'm still stuck between wanting to scream and wanting to hide. She stopped at the door, turning to face me. Remember in college, when my mom got sick, how everyone kept asking how I was holding up, and I just kept moving forward? I nodded. You planned the funeral, handled the estate, took care of your dad. You barely cried then either. I did cry, just not where anyone could see me. Her composure finally cracked, just slightly. I'll fall apart eventually, Summer, but right now, I need to finish what I started. We stepped outside into the sunshine. The venue coordinator was waiting to lock up behind us, her expression sympathetic. All done? She asked. Lucille handed her the stack of notes. Could you make sure these are placed on the tables for when guests arrive? I've posted online, but some people might not see it. Of course. And again, I'm so sorry. As we walked to our cars, Lucille suddenly stopped. I never thanked you properly. You don't need to. I do. She turned to face me. It would have been easier to stay quiet, to let me marry him and never know the truth. But you chose the harder path because it was the right one. I was terrified of losing you, I admitted, of you hating me for being the messenger. I could never hate you for telling me the truth. She reached for my hand, squeezing it tightly, even when it hurts. We stood there for a moment, the weight of everything that had happened, and everything that hadn't, settling between us. What now? I asked finally. Now? Lucille looked back at the venue one last time. Now I go home and cry in the shower where no one can hear me. I return the dress I was supposed to wear to my rehearsal dinner. I delete the honeymoon itinerary from my phone. And after that? A small, genuine smile touched her lips. After that, I start over. We both do. As we parted ways in the parking lot, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The truth had cost us both. Dreams shattered, trust broken, a future erased. But standing in its aftermath, I realized something important. Sometimes the most painful truths are also the most necessary ones. Lucille rolled down her window as she started her car. Dinner tomorrow, just us. Absolutely, I promised. And Summer? She called as I reached my own car. Next time I fall in love with someone, I'm asking you to vet them first. I laughed, the sound surprising me with its authenticity. Deal. As I drove away from the wedding that would never happen, I thought about the many forms love takes. Romantic love, yes, but also the love of friendship that had survived its greatest test. The kind of love that tells hard truths, that weathers storms, that chooses what's right over what's easy. The kind that remains when everything else falls away.